Welcome to study group number 34. Woohoo!
Wow.
I
Amazing.
know. It's amazing. I'm putting this up here in case somebody can't hear me to say that we are recording this. So please mind your mute and be muted unless you want to talk to me. I put the website on there because the pay link is on the website. And I also put my address on there, my email address, in case you don't like PayPal, because if you go to the website to pay, you'll get a PayPal. And I want to remind everybody that this is Pay What and If You Can Learning. So some of you are sending me checks for $40 for the month, and that's awesome, and I appreciate it, and it's a good way to go. Forward focus. Oh my gosh. I'm always saying my favorite subject, but this one really might be. And I'm hoping that the article gave you some things to think about. My 2 on 2 off online program has a lot about forward focus, and usually these kicks that I get on have their roots somewhere. So my light bulb moment about forward focus was about the contacts, because these dogs had all this incentive, to get, they were eating buckets of food constantly with the 2 on 2 off position. And yet the vast majority of dogs were questioning their job at some point in their career. And often it was way early on. So I started to realize that it was based in anticipation of reward for the performance. Like once I saw it, it was like so obvious, one of those things. So here the dog is coming down and they're going to get something. And I'm really having fun lately thinking about when anticipation itself helps us in dog training and when it hinders us. So more will be revealed about that. So I started noticing how much training had to be on board for that dog to not look at his handler until his feet were in the right spot. And what I came up with was almost no one cared. They only cared if the feet made it to the 2 on 2 off. The dog was getting positive reinforcement if his feet ended up in the correct position, no matter what else was happening. So then on the dog walk especially, and the teeter, those boards are only 12 inches wide. So if the dog started to check with the cookie machine or the ball thrower, or the person searching frantically on their body for the cookie or the ball thrower, they couldn't go fast and turn their head and do an assessment. So they would slow down or stop in order to do that. And because that piece wasn't addressed immediately, looking at the handler, and we talk about Braille in the article. And I want to look at some of those pictures with you. So then, of course, like everything, I started the whole revelation to me bled all over everywhere. I started noticing and questioning how many of the errors that the dogs make are born from that one thing. And sometimes it's way easier to see than others, you guys. So, there's some border collies especially that, they're not so good. they're bred to keep their eye on something far away. It's probably just moving a little. So they're happy to try to keep their eye on everything. And I think it must be hard as hell to navigate turns over bars and stay in 12 little sticks and end up on the right side of the hole for the round thing we call a tunnel, and not know for sure if you're supposed to be keeping an eye on the cueing machine. Because how many times when we're cueing, if it's a physical cue, we've said to the dog, you better not miss this cue, you better keep your eyes on me. Now, like every single week, I get to go to breed, because if we're not considering our dog's learning history and their breed and training, we're not doing our job. So there are some breeds, golden retrievers come to mind, that blow me out of the water with how they can keep one eye. I mean, it's, it's a hunting, right? They've got one eye on the bird or where the bird fell. Yes, you can correct me later if you have the need, but they're good where I can see in agility what dogs are good at. And however the hunter needed the Goldens to pay attention to their signals versus what's happening with the bird, those dogs have developed a skill to not miss much, at least on the agility course. They are amazing with how they can keep one eye on the handler. They're not doing that focus on this, focus on that, thing like the border collies are. And the terriers and the beagles and some of the other dogs, I mean, you can easily read in any breed book if the dog was bred to work independently, keep its focus on its own job, or a combo, take some direction, or just, like I like to say that terriers have been bred systematically to disregard human instruction. I mean, they're bred that if the hunter takes a terrier to the barn, or the farmer takes a terrier to the barn and says, go get those rats underneath that bale of hay, the terrier that's going to get bred is the one that goes, no, they're over there. I ain't listening to you. You don't know anything. So terriers don't think we know anything. And that just means their training has to be approached in a different way. So with that little introduction into how in my obsession with not just forward focus, but my obsession with teaching dogs where their attention should be grows every year. I'm more and more fascinated by how I can influence it. I'm more fascinated by teaching my students how to be aware of it. I just think I think it's the avenue to communication. If my dog on an agility course knows where he should be focused every minute, woohoo, sky is the limit. And I am saying to that dog, so let's say the average course has, 20 some obstacles at the master level. So basically what we're saying, if we want, this word gets thrown around in the sport and I have fun with it getting thrown around, this phrase, independent obstacle performance. Now, I'm thinking that means independent of me. So then could we say, when you're doing that, I want you to ignore me, but I don't want you to miss it if I change a line, set a lane, or give a turn cue. So now are we saying, this is the deal, dog. Here's the deal I'm going to cut with you. I'm going to go out there for under a minute. We're going to face 20 some obstacles with multiple turn cues, left and right, both directions. I'm going to cue extension collection so that you know whether to jump big or tight. And there's going to be times where you cannot take your eyes off of me. And there are times where you're going to completely ignore me. And it's going to be back and forth constantly for the time that's going to be under a minute. Dog's going, sign me up. So I'm just saying, cut them some slack and think about how you can help, how you can be of service to that little dog. So any questions while I can see your little pictures in your faces before I get into the article about what I just said or the article? You don't have to wait for me to get to the spot in the article if there's something you want to ask me about. I'll take another sip. All right, I'm taking that as a no. I'm going to screen share. The last couple times we've had folks putting their questions in the chat or interrupting me. And I had some feedback. One of the participants said that they didn't like sending the chat because sometimes I would be talking on to the next thing. Well, you guys, I'm going to be talking on endlessly forever. So don't be afraid if by the time you finish typing, I'm on to the next thing, because I can bounce around with the best of them. I've got no problems. And then another thing that's been wonderful is when there is a question in the chat, folks, let me know. So permission to interrupt. We're a small group and we can get away with a lot. All right, I'm going to share the screen. And you should have a nice picture of a Labrador. Gwen, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see the screen share? Thank you. Like to give credit to Laura Chuck for her photography. I do want to touch bases on this first bit where I'm saying, I suspected when I wrote this that there would be people like going, yeah, no. there's enough to train. And you guys, I honestly still believe that this is worth it. I really believe that it's worth it, because I think if the dog knows where to work, that's good too. If he knows where to look, it makes everything else exponentially faster, easier, better to train. So it's definite, and it's not hard. It's only hard if you've got one thing going against you, which some of you have had. So this when in doubt, look at me. I often talk about when in doubt, take the jump with refusals. So most dogs have, and it can change. This is what I need you to know. They have a preference as to whether or not they prefer handler focused or obstacle focused. So we've got some dogs that are just like, I mean, getting the dog to take his eyes off the obstacles is like pulling teeth. And then we've got what is classically called Velcro dogs. And as I say that to you tonight, I'm just wondering if a lot of these Velcro dogs started from just sometimes I think dogs have these little personal preferences that are very innocent, and then they just become a habit, or they get reinforced enough for other things, just like that where to look on the contacts. So dog goes down to the contact, handler comes in bearing gifts, and dog is looking up for the gifts, and the handler is paying the dog's head over here. So placement of reward, paying that head nice and straight, can make the difference. Am I saying the dog has to keep his head straight? I'm saying no, it's an advantage if he does. And that's why I quit. I don't go in and pay on the board anymore. Once I've trained the dog to stop well enough, I throw the food in front. And I also have to train the dog to not steal the food, and that's beneficial in everyday life as well. So this when in doubt, look at me, just determines the size of the job. It just determines if you're gonna have to work a little harder to balance the focus. And a lot of that's determined by learning history. How old is the dog? How long has he had his eyes glued on you? How long has he had his eyes glued on the obstacles? So if you've got a young dog, I want to inspire you to balance it. And if you've got a dog that already is over focused when it comes to you or to your obstacles, you might be surprised, you guys, at how little it takes to change. You also might be surprised how hard it is to change. And that's our dogs get to tell us that. So, but you can try, you can see. I mean, you may say, I can't spend all my time on this. But if you've got a young dog, I'll give you some tips on how to get it easy. Is anybody right now thinking that they may have a problem with their dog's focus? Do any of you have dogs that you think maybe are knocking bars because they're looking back at you, or maybe missing weave pole entries because they haven't had the time to focus on the entrance? Do any of you think you're having problems? You could type it, or actually, can I don't think I can access chat while we're doing this. Well, you can put it in there and it'll be there waiting for me when we get done screen sharing. So.
Sandy?
Yes.
I would comment that the times that I see my dog exhibiting too much handler focus is when I haven't been clear enough. I haven't given enough information. So generally, I view that as my fault.
Well, we can make it all your fault if that'll make it easier.
Yeah. Well, I thought it already was. I was beating you to it.
So, oh my gosh, I had the most wonderful conversation with a student today about when it's our fault, because we still have to be teachers. So we still have to teach our dogs, and whose fault it is, really. I'm so grateful that I've gotten to a point in my career where I really don't care if it's a team sport between me and my dog, and it's really the lesson that I have to put forth is the same no matter whose fault it is. So probably what you're really talking about is being late. And I've added more and more verbals into my teaching. Hello, Pat. And we're finding that if the dogs are told sooner and sooner and sooner what to do, that there's less of that checking in. But yeah, we can do all kinds of things to upset the focus apple cart. Digging in our pockets, being in a position that the dog isn't used to. I mean, I can see dogs going, what the hell are you doing over there? And almost come to a dead stop when the handler tries to peel off. And that's just something that the dog isn't used to. Is that the type of thing you meant, Cindy?
Yes, I guess my point is that my goal is I feel as though if I've given adequate information and I've given it in a timely enough fashion, that obstacle focus will be an indicator that the dog has received the message.
Yeah, it's that where I'm at with that very thing right now is in fact, I just created a little tip for Facebook on this. So Nancy Guys has a thing she calls a manufactured go on, where the dog is being told, when I say go on, what it means is take what's ever in your path, don't think. gobble the obstacles like Pac-Man did. Just take it. So if the line isn't set right and they accelerate and end up off course, I'm thrilled beyond imagine, because that is what it meant. So I do have some responsibility there. So so here are some words that mean ignore me: poles, scramble, tunnel, go on. So if I'm using those words in sequence and coursework, and the dog doesn't do it, I have to stop and answer those questions and teach. Where I really wanted to go with that is, if you're, you said if it was enough, reasonable is the word I use, was the cue reasonable? And now that tip that I am sharing here within the next few days is going to talk about when I'm handling and sequencing coursework, when I'm practicing smoothness, when I'm practicing timing and handling as if I want it to be the way I want it to be when I compete, I am helping the dog as much as I possibly can with my eyes, my feet, and my hands. I am helping the dog so much that I can't even be sure if my training is working, because I'm making it happen. So because I want to do that, and I want to do that because it's the only way that I know how to get smooth. If I'm stopping to train all the time in sequence and coursework, I can't get smooth. And I taught for 20 years to reinforce behaviors during sequence and coursework. So now when I ask that same question, was the cue reasonable, or did I do my job enough? It's a different question for me now. The question is, did I do everything I could? So if I'm driving a line, is my weight forward? Is my arm up, if that's appropriate? Am I driving with my voice in the inflection, tone, and volume that is going to be the most effective? This means if I want to do that, if I want to help the dog as much, not as, I ain't judging how much he needs, or my favorite, how much he should need, or I'm literally not relying on my training. Now that sounds weird, but I learned, I got to that conclusion when I was getting ready for Worlds, and I watched some World Team handlers, and I was like, Mike, talk about over handling. Because we throw that word around all the time too, phrase that I don't even know really what that means. Does that mean you're helping all you can? No, I'm not saying handling wrong. Over handling to me is like, you didn't set the line and the timing. You screwed up the timing because you didn't trust the dog. And that don't get me started on how the hell do we trust, judge if we're trusting or not. So that means if I want to handle like that, I have to have training sessions. And this brings up the word of practicing. So people, when you practice, are you practicing sequence and coursework? Meaning you're handling your guts out. You're doing everything you possibly can to help your partner throw out an awesome sequence or course. If you're doing that, then you don't know if your dog's training comprehension is going up, because you're helping so darn much. So that means I have to do tests. I have to have training sessions with the poles and the contacts and the individual obstacles, and say, hey, if I'm not doing all of those things, would you know how to do it without me? Because there are times where I'm, believe it or not, far from perfect. So it's basically saying, if I screw up, can you still hit your pole entry, do your 2 on 2 off, keep your focus together, do what I trained you to do? So that's the big eye opener that I had several years ago, that it's another one. The more every year that goes by, I'm more and more and more convinced. So when my dogs go wrong in sequence and coursework, I know that I was doing, this is what happens in sequence and coursework with my students all the time. The dog makes a mistake and the handler takes them back and does it again and tries harder. They're louder, or they go in a step further, or they, you know, they handle with more intention. They make it happen is what they do. So then I want to ask them, so which handling was better, the first handling A or the second handling B? And they're like, well, I had to do B. And it's like, well, is the goal that you shouldn't have to do B, that you should be able to do A? And they'll say, yeah, that's the goal. He should have gotten it with the less aggressive handling. And I just decided, I don't know, I don't like that. That's not, I want to, when I'm helping, when I'm running, when we're a team, when we're putting the training together, and I know my arms matter, and I know my mouth matters, and I know my feet matter, and I know I can influence my dog by lanes and lines, I want to get every bit of that as clear as I possibly can. Why? Why do I want to help that much when I've done all that training and I shouldn't have to? What's my incentive?
Odds of success.
Say
I
again,
would-
Amy?
Would increase your odds of success.
It would, but it also affords my dog something that's very important to me.
For me, my response was, well, why wouldn't we if it just really creates clear communication and handle it? I mean, just that clear communication, they don't have to think as much. We don't, well, I shouldn't say we don't have to think as much because we have to prepare it. But to me, it just increases that teamwork and connection better.
Why is that a good thing? What happens for the dog?
Confidence.
Confidence, because it's
Clarity.
Yeah.
easier. Yes, all of that stuff adds up to, I can make it easier. I can neon sign and green light you and be as clear as I can be. And if I'm taking responsibility for where you should be looking and rewarding you for looking, I am making it easier. When things are easy for dogs, they go faster. They have fun. You guys, we all know when we take tests, what it feels like to take an easy test versus what it's like to take a hard test, you know? And so when I screw up in handling, somebody's got their mic on, you know, I want to say, did I do everything I could have? Was I handling, you know, not just well, but you know, what was, if he screwed up, what was missing? Were my eyes wrong? Were my hands wrong? You know, what piece might have made the difference? And for me, that's fun because it lets me off the hook when I don't get a bunch of stuff right. Or if I don't get, sometimes you guys, the key elements to success on a tricky part of a course are, you know, I joke with my students that sometimes I walk a course and you know, what judges are doing nowadays is they are designing courses that are much, much easier to handle the non-best way for the dog. And for those of you with less experience, when you have to decide that you get to decide the dog's path. You have to stay on course, but you get to decide if the dog goes to the left of the jump or the right to the jump to get to the next thing. And one of those ways has less turns and is easier on the dog. It's easier to make a half of a U-shaped turn than it is to make a full circle turn. So one of our jobs is to find a smooth path that's easier on the dog's body. It's physically easier. Well, what the judges they're doing now, because they're always inspiring us. they find our weak spots. You know, I've been doing this for 30 years, so it's like I have seen the trends in course design, and then we get really good at, you know, SERPs, and then they make them all 180s, and then we get really good at that, or I mean threadles, and then they go back to threadles. And so sometimes it's hard. Like, and I'm pretty determined to handle the path that's easiest on my dog's body, again, because it will be more fun. The more fun my dog is having, the faster he goes, the more competitive I am. It's all boils down to selfishness at some point. And so sometimes when I'm facing, can I do this? Can I take that better path and do the more difficult handling? I'm like, the key out, you know, I have to get this part and this part and this part. And before all those parts, I got to get this part. And then after that, I got to be here. And if I don't pull all those things off, my success rate, just, you know, my chances of it working are going to be a little less, a little less, a little less, a little less. So it's kind of okay if I don't pull it off, because it was like, well, I had a lot on my plate and I didn't get it all just right that time. So, so back to, did that help? Was I answering a question?
I'm going to follow up a little bit. So is some of what you're describing here a difference in the way you would handle in training, where you might separate the verbal cue from the physical cue, from the feet, from the hands, to try to figure out what's actually making your dog do a certain thing, versus the way you would handle in competition, where you're going to pull it all out and you're going to handle with everything?
Yeah. So for example, if I'm handling this is an easy example. When I'm handling sequence and coursework at my own house, preparing for trial, I am handling the weave pulls as if the dog doesn't know how to do them. I'm setting the line to pull 2. My eyes are just right. I'm repeating the command. I am delivering the dog. I mean, if there's distance involved, then I'm, of course, handling my lane, my distance as I want to, as is to my advantage in that particular sequence. So if I'm always handling, and my handling is getting better and better, and I'm always helping the dog with line setting, with the lane, with the verbal, with the hand, with the feet, I could be creating a cripple. I could be creating a dog that can't do it if I don't do all that stuff. I don't want that. I don't want a dog who can't hit a weave pull entry, but I also don't want to be a sloppy handler. And I'll see this in the class, you know, the person will chuck the dog at the poles and go the other way, which in my mind eyes is giving a pull cue in the middle of an execution. And the argument is, well, they know it, they should do it. And once I've said pulls, they should ignore me. And my argument back is, does it really behoove you to say to the dog, there will be some turn cues on course that I want you to ignore? I mean, there is an argument there, but I don't feel the need to say it's a dog. It's not a Rhodes Scholar that you're dating. I mean, I don't want to do that. I just don't want to. I want to, sometimes I have to, sometimes I have to say pull, 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 and I am going to give a turn cue and leave, if that's the advantage for me on that course. So what I'm saying is, Cindy, I have to set up training sessions. So I can say I am working on sequence and coursework fluency, or I'm in a training session where I have set up a drill to test comprehension. So I could sit in a lawn chair and drink an iced tea and train weave pulls and not be handling at all.
Okay, that's clear.
Okay. So I want to talk about these bullet pointed things. So do you have a rule for driving into the 2-on 2-on position? No, I'll tell you mine. My preference is that my dog does not look at me until his front feet are on the ground. And then he can look at me. There's not enough hours in the day for me to train, because this was a hard one for me at first, because I played with that. Could I have it that you actually never look at me? And I spent some time on more than one dog working on it. I realized it was actually to my advantage. I couldn't have it both ways. And the training to say to the dog, you can't look at me once you're in the position, was going to be way more than I wanted to do. So, and this was clean. So did I do things that would cause the dog to did he ever look at me? Yes, he did. What did I do? I planted reinforcement. I did short ones from ahead. I answered the question. So you guys, to me, it just seems so stinking simple that if I teach the dog that he can't look at me until his feet get there, then when he does it, because I was rattling in my pocket, because I fell too far behind. I mean, at some point, every dog is going to go, where, and have you fainted? Are you dead back there? So then I have to go, oh, mini reminder. And then guess what? I stopped the sequence and coursework. And now my practice time has turned into a training session. But I'm not trying to Mickey Mouse the lesson and get right back to my course. That's where we go wrong. That's when we're trying to do two things at once. Can you reinforce behaviors in sequence and coursework? Sure. Every self-rewarding behavior is. It's just the behaviors that your dog struggles with, whether it's the poles or the teeter or and it's typically the ones that they're not that keen on. You know, who wants to stop in the middle of the course? They don't want to. They want to see if the cookie's coming, is the ball coming? So that's my answer to that one. Executing a running dog walk or an A-frame. We've started with the running contacts, giving the dog the next, whether it's a directional or an obstacle, way sooner, way sooner. Oh my God, the dogs teach me so much, you guys. Like, you want it sooner. And when we're saying go on scramble, we're working those running contacts and boxes. So it's go on left or dig if there's a tight turn coming up. So we're giving the dogs the information sooner and sooner and sooner. And Cindy, I think this is what you were talking about. I mean, then they don't have to go, hello, is there any information coming? Are there going to be any directions in my near future? So we're starting to finding ways to give the dog on an individual basis, like when I'm training, I'm like, wow, could it be sooner? Wow. Could you understand? And their dog's like, yeah, I already knew it was this thing I'm doing, duh. So it's fun stuff, guys. It's fun. The teeter hitting the ground. Can the dog look at you at the tipping point? Does he have to keep his forward focus? Is there something you can do to help him keep his focus forward until the board hits the ground? If you've got 2 on 2 off, again, it would be till the feet hit the ground. In the process of doing a go on, this is why I repeat go on. You guys, I wanted it to mean so bad for years and years and years. I thought, I say go on, you do go on until I say something else. How hard can it be? Well, then the dogs taught me that absence of a verbal means probably a turn cue is coming up, because that's when I would change. I didn't want to repeat commands, but if you want it to be easy, you can't say, you can have some behaviors in an indefinite amount of time. Stay is a good example. You can say stay for 2 seconds or 20 minutes. And that's fair. But when we're back to this 40 seconds, 20 obstacles, extension, collection, it's too much. So and our timing's not good enough. We're not good enough. We can't rise to the occasion enough of the time to not give the dog. So now it's go on, go on, go on, dig, dig, dig in the information zone when the turn is coming, or left or right in the information zone. So as long as my dog is hearing go on, go on, go on, it is way easier for me to hold them accountable, for lack of a better way to say it. I don't mean they're in trouble if they don't do it, but it makes it a little easier on me for the dog to go, oh, hold the phone. Does go on mean 2 jumps, 6 jumps? Like, I can't teach that, you guys. It's too, and for until further notice, there's too many times on course where I'm quiet because I can't breathe. So I don't want to, and I don't want to blabbermouth the whole entire time. If you're confused right now, I think that I could understand why. But just trust that a lot of thought has gone into it, and I'm having great success with the theory for me and my students' dogs on the dog hearing go on, go on, go on until it's over. And that means do not look back at me. So if I'm using go on, go on, go on, and actually it sounds like this, go on, go on, go on. It's not a flat fall asleep lullaby. It's a drivey inflection until further notice. And it means don't look at me. So if I'm doing that and the dog goes, I'm supposed to look at you after the third one, right? I abandon ship on my sequence and coursework, plant reinforcement, or change something up, or do the same thing again if he's fluent. And then you guys, if the dog struggles with it, guess what? I need to do some maintenance work on my go on the next time I train. This is how I know when I'm in training sessions, what those sessions are going to be. The dog tells me in the sequence and coursework. It's so easy. It's so easy. They're so damn honest. Weaving. When can you look at me? Leather of nose at pole 12. There's your answer. Exiting a tunnel or a chute. Here's the deal. Dog's face goes into the tunnel. Dog is told, look for me or look for an obstacle. It's hard, but that's my commitment. So when Tux goes into a tunnel or Quizzleberry, they're told if they're to look for me to set the line, for me to do a recall, for me to cue something else, I'm saying their name. Their name means get to me, look to me. If I don't want them to look at me, if I want them to look for an obstacle, it had better be the obvious one. And then I can tell them as soon as their faces go into the tunnel, go on jump, go on scramble, go on poles, pull, 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 look for those poles as you're coming out. Oh my gosh, the difference in the dogs with this one simple thing. If you want to take on one solid responsibility for timing, start there. That the minute your dog's face goes in a tunnel, they are being told how to exit. Jumps to me are like parlor tricks now. Go to the backside, go left tight, go right tight, go left big, go right big, extension, collection, and then doing distance work. And that's probably where, again, I think in the distance work, it's the easiest to notice if they're checking back when you don't want them to. And that's back to that manufactured go on. It's about teaching the dogs how to listen. You guys, a lot of people have dogs that from the time they're puppies, they combine verbals and physical cues right from the get-go. You know, they teach down and sit and get the dog's attention before they do a recall. I believe we can teach all dogs how to listen. Like, I don't care if I have your attention, your ears still work. So Quilly Bear here, any questions? You guys, this is so easy. This is back to what I was talking about, contacts. And this is back to basic everyday training with or without an attention or a focus on agility. When you are, this is so good. And there's a YouTube thing called Balance Beam on my YouTube channel right now that talks a lot about this very thing, about how to reward forward focus when an obstacle is in play. But when you're first trying to get a dog on something and you don't care where they're looking, you can train this Braille thing easy, and you don't have to. You can untrain it just as easy because you're reaching and you're giving them a cookie anyway. It's just the difference between whether you meet this, I got my cursor on your screen now, whether or not you put that cookie on this nose with the neck in that position or this nose. So maybe Quill, imagine this, if you will. Quill is terrified of the VersaDisc. It's taking me 3 sessions to get her within a foot of it. And she finally gets her foot on it. And I have to pay. And darn it, she's looking at me. And Sandy said, I shouldn't pay that. I can say yes for the feet and then still have her swallowing that cookie with her head not looking at me. So it's just a matter whether I deposit the cookie down this tube or I deposit the cookie in the tube going this way. So would I rather get the cookie down in front of her before she looks at me? Yes, 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 of course. Do I have to be clever in order to do that? I have to be awake at the wheel. And again, that's my job and the fun part for me. So, you know, I can get to a point with a VersaDisc where the VersaDisc gets plopped down and the dog has no desire to look at me. I've got get to the thing, and then I can say yes as they're heading to it and pay them once they're on it. So it's fun and easy. It really is. And I do it with logs in the park. If I see the dog, see the log, you know, my dogs, I get a lot of log action when I'm hiking. They see it, they go for it. I'm like, yes, I meet them there. They get the cookie. Hopefully I'm not too far behind, but they'll run, they'll keep, if I green light them, I'll have lovely forward focus on their way there. And once they're on it, they're allowed to look at me. I mean, I say that as if they'd be in trouble if they didn't. If they did look at me or start saying, can I really have it, Mama? Can I really? Can I really? Can I really? I wouldn't, I just laugh and know that I need some more forward focus. Would I be saying, go on, go on, go on? Sure, why not? Way into cake and eat it too. So I did not, let me be clear, I would not withhold reinforcement for photo 1. I would just not give, the dog wouldn't be swallowing. I could just move my hand in front. Is that a lure? Probably. I could argue that it was placement of reward for the timing of the feet being correct. And then these I wanna, so this is a biggie. I like to also train obstacle names. I want the dog, when they hear tunnel, that they know that that means don't look at me, look for the round thing or the caterpillar, depending on the angle, and get in it. So I like to put the dog in a position like Quill is for number 7, with my arm outstretched, and say, tunnel, 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 while I'm holding the collar. So she's just fighting me and then I open my hand. So I'm actually telling her tunnel, tunnel, tunnel. And she's saying, let me go, let me go. And it's fun. That's how I train my air. So I'll do it with the poles. I'll do it with a jump. And what I don't do is if you go to picture photo 3 now, I don't have the dog in heel position with eye contact, revving them up for the tunnel. I go to position 7, photo 7. And my dogs learn really quick because I like it when they're in heel position and they give me their attention. The other thing is if I give them my eyes, I want their eyes because that works for me. This is heel position. I like her focus on me. So I like it for everyday life. I'm walking down the street. I like that. So simply by changing the position that I ask for forward focus by outstretching my arm and having the dog ahead of me, it makes the training effort in half because there's this big, gigantic physical cue component that helps it be clear for the dog. And then I don't have to worry about shifting her focus from me to the obstacle in this scenario. Those of you who have done my contact program and have done the BAM program, the pre-agility program, you guys know that I take lots of other opportunities to say, focus on me, take your focus off of me and go to the obstacle. So it's like, we're working. Now it's you, kid, you go. So I do this all the time with all my dogs. I call it kind of assume the position. I'll shove them out in front of me. Like Quilly is not, this is the bad example, number 5. I said, I assumed the position. I shoved her out in front of me. Now, you guys, I'm not using a look command. I don't want to train another verbal. I got enough. I got all I want, all I can handle. So she learned it by photo 4. I mean, it's pretty obvious what to look at, and you can do that with a hunk of steak too. And what I would do for photo 4 is I'd be holding her there saying, get it, get it, get it, while I'm continuing to hold her. And then as she pulls toward it, I open my fingers and let her go. This photo 8 and 9, you don't have to go to this extent. You can just, this is more about what not, I mean, you can do that, and Quill could do that. I mean, I could position, so in 8 and 9, I've got what I call the triangle. Dog, toy, me form a triangle. And I could look at her and she'd look at me, and I would throw my focus to the toy and she would do that. She would look at the toy. But you don't need to go quite that far. By throwing your attention. Will the dog have good comprehension? Yes. Is it fun to teach? Well, I don't take on too much teaching wise that I don't find fun. I'm always so curious as to what I can get. So, but the default, we talked about that a little bit. If I'm looking at the dog, it's always okay for the dog to be looking at me. Now, this picture down here, because I did have Quill trained, shows me 11, shows me looking at her because her forward focus is trained. So it's not, so the training isn't to the extent of, if I'm looking at you, you have to notice. And one of my classes in the footage, I think I left it in actually. It's in the 2 on 2 off class. I left it in because I said something, we were working on forward focus in the program. And I said, well, you're looking at the dog. She said, you told me to look at the dog. And I was like, oh yeah, I mean, one eye. So when you're training some of this stuff, you got to get a little clever with your peripheral vision and be able to look where you want the dog to look. but position yourself so that you can still tell what the dog is doing. And I've always thought that mirrors were really the way um, to train it. But again, you don't have to go to that length. What I've got here in the article will be plenty. And then there's a big difference, like in 11, you know, you guys, there's a big difference between giving hard eye contact and having your eye sort of on the whole dog. There's a really big difference. And when you're handling and teachers are telling you, you know, watch your dog, we're meaning stay connected visually, not give your dog both of your eyes directly into their eyes. One thing that I highly recommend is that if you do fetch work or you set your bowl of food down for your dog to eat, that you would be better off for our sport to have the dog stare at what is out there, the bowl of food or the tennis ball or the Frisbee or whatever, than to stare at you for permission. I had a lady a couple weeks ago. She's like, I've trained my dog for years to stare at me and wait for permission. I'm like, well, we're just going to change it up. And she goes, but I love it. I love it that she does that. My friends all love it that, oh, look at your dog staring at you. Can I go now? Can I eat now? But for our purposes, having a dog that will stare at planted reinforcement. My puppy, every night I set his bowl down and then and he's staring at it and I'm moving around and, and sometimes, he'll shift his little eyebrows and then I don't know what to do, but I just wait till I get that stare again and then release him. So building up the time on it. So, and again, when my dogs have questions in sequence and coursework on where to look, I stop and help. I go back to kindergarten and do a mini refresher course. And if it doesn't work, then I have to go back in a few training sessions and because you guys, what happens in trials, we're behind on that. And depending on how far behind you are and how recently you had a maintenance session, you're yelling, go on, go on. And if we get hysterical, so you can plug your ears if you want, but here's what you guys, I have trained myself to do this. You can catch me out. You can bust me on lots of things in trial, but you will hear me saying, go on, go on, go on, go on. And what a lot of people do is go on, 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 go on. So their pitch their hair is on fire, which of course makes the dog go, oh, are you all right? The dog can't ignore it. The handler sounds like they're dying. So if you're doing things that are forcing your dog to check in, then you need more practice. Maybe it's not the dog that needs to go back to kindergarten. So questions, forward focus.
You woke my dog up on that one.
Mine didn't. I'm a little bit worried. The romp at the park was a good one. What I want to encourage you to do when you're training your dog, even crap around the house or out on the streets, and he, I'm so glad I remembered this. Oh my gosh, I'm so glad I remember this. There can be times where you don't care. Not on the agility course, but when you're out for a walk, how much attention do I need to have on me? Is it okay if my dog doesn't pay one lick of attention to me in this scenario? I personally praise check-ins when I hike and often reward them. I also hide when they forget to. But the other two will often give me away. That happened yesterday. Tux and Jigs will be like, she's right there. Don't, she. Any questions, guys? Have fun with it. Start noticing. Oh, that's adorable. Is the dog on the kitchen table, Pat? I have a new, Pat's starting a new class.
Yes,
at
yes,
8,
he is.
and we're
Yes, and
starting
I'm
in
teaching
March.
self-control. Ha ha
And
ha.
I have an ad coming out that Pat hasn't seen. And it says, if you haven't trained with Pat White lately, you haven't trained with Pat White. Someone that's always
Great.
to get better. So.
Yes, he's on the
there's
table.
that little bugger. Oh, Cindy. Hi, little baby. Too cute. All right, dogs all around.
They bought a boo.
Let's have a cute dog contest.
He's here.
Tataboo. Who's a bata? Who's a bata
I got
bata?
cookies to get out of the
Okay,
oven.
now she's worried.
Yeah, yeah. Christine's cooking is like, oh my, on the loose.